Hi, I'm Jim Newman. I was in the Air Force from 1969 to 1991. I served at two bases actually three bases in Texas. Went to basic training at Lackland, and I went to Wichita Falls for my technical training. And then they assigned me to Del Rio, a place called Laughlin Air Force Base. It was an ATC base, and I learned a lot about the aircraft maintenance that I was in for. When the pilots would go down in Vietnam, we had the rescue. I was involved in the search and rescue from the job control, and we were on a radio with the pilots. If they went down, and we would try to guide the pararescue team to them. And a couple of times we had pilots that were overran by the Vietnamese, and it was pretty tough. I remember one time the pilot was crying for his mom before he got killed. And that was horrendous. I had dreams about that. Had nightmares about that. But we could hear the bombs going off at night and everything on the Ho Chi Minh Trail and what have you. I mean, laying in my bunk, I could feel the bed vibrating, you know. And I just had to go there a few times. I mean, it was probably 3 or 4 months. And when I went back to NKP, then they sent me down to Udon, Thailand. And we had the F-4s down there. It's something that affected me at the time, you know. And it was at Gwynn that, in Marquette, we were close to Marquette. I met my wife now, Jeannie. And we were married in '77. She was Lutheran. I wasn't. Not yet. Got married in '77, 10th September. And I had my young son, who was 6 at the time, and he was. It was a blessing that I got custody of him. And he fell in love with Jeannie too. So we got married in '77, and shortly after I got orders for Germany. So we went to Rhein Main Air Force Base in Germany. When we were over there, we found a Lutheran church, Missouri Synod, and excuse me. The pastor Pastor Henschel was on the base, and he was one of our chaplains. And I took instruction through him. I had been a Pentecostal my whole life. And my grandfather was big in the Pentecostal church, and I know that he had prayed for me all the time. I was away in different bases and overseas and everything. The Pastor Henschel give my instruction. I took catechism and everything through him, and I just fell in love with the religion. I mean, it was my cup of tea. And Jeannie was already a Lutheran anyway, so Jimmy and I were both baptized in the Lutheran religion. And also, while we were there, our youngest son was born, and he was also baptized as a Lutheran. And I had a number of people who worked for me, and it was a great way of life. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I was and I had a couple of hiccups along the way. I was a drinker, and I ended up going to a treatment center, and I'm sober today, which is blessing. But I had God in my life, and my God really, He's a forgiving and loving God, and He taught me to be the same way. And I treat people the way I want to be treated today. And I had to throw that in.
My name is Keith Huffman. I was drafted in the United States Army in 1965, not long after high school. And after completing basic training and advanced individual training, I was summoned to Vietnam, and I drew orders to be in the Big Red 1. That's an infantry unit, as you know. And I reported into this unit on June 20th, 1966. The company was in the field, so shortly after reporting there, they flew me out to the field where I joined in extensive combat. Of all the many, many stories to be told, I don't have time. I'll select one that kind of sticks in my mind of how our Lord actually put a message physically in my hand. And the story goes like this. In a very, very fierce firefight in the Battle of Bong Trang on April 25, 1966, I'd been there 2 months. I'm ducked in behind this large tree, and the fighting is fierce. Small twigs are getting sheared off all around me, when a .50 caliber projectile broke through the tree and fell right here, right in front of me. I picked it up. I burnt my fingers. This was a message from God saying, there's now a hole in that tree you're hiding behind. I'm going to die if he touches that trigger again. I give a yank to my buddy, Taylor Kent, and I went, probably 10 feet off in the direction of 10 o'clock positioning in a hailstorm, and neither one of us were hit. That battle lasted 3 days and 2 nights, and it ended with the bombing. The U.S. jets come in and they bombed us. They killed 30 of us and wounded 135 of us. I was in the middle of that. My body got blown through the light stuff. I woke up sometime later, all this quiet, and I finally figure out I'm not hurt, I'm not injured. It was just the airflow and no metal in it to destroy me in the middle of all these casualties. Another happening, God had his hands all over this, without any doubt. And I rejoined my company and went on to survive that. I had the listening post on the 3rd night of that, where they had some artillery flares giving a certain percentage of light. And I heard an ox cart bearing, squeaking. They're in here policing up the dead. There's 700 of them. I knew what that noise was, and my buddy on my right pressed his elbow against me, and I looked to my right without doing any movement, and I see this Viet Cong walking through here, and he's right-handed. He's got an AK-47, and the barrel is going to travel within a foot of my chest. I have no idea whether he saw me and he's not going to act until he's in position. We're nestled back in some greenery. When the barrel got past me, then I knew he did not see me. So what to do with this? I'm in charge of this 2-man detail. I elected to do nothing because he might be the lead element of a whole big squad. Plus, I can't take him without some noise. And the ox cart bearing told me there's a lot of people in here policing up the dead. That's what they do. I know what's going on there. I don't dare to take this guy because I can't do it in silence. So I let him go. The rest of the night was like this, and we never saw another person come by us. It's a long night. That was on the 25th of August, 1966. And when I got off on the driving job, I had a lot better job. I did get ambushed. I drove through an ambush, and that was pretty iffy. My truck got riddled, but I took no rounds. Another prayer being answered. It was one prayer answered right after another throughout my tour in the war. So with that, I will close now, and that's part of my life.
Hi, I'm Jackie Hare. Maiden name is Blau. I joined the service, the United States Air Force, in 1974 and stayed in until 78. I started in Lackland Air Force Base, which was basic training, and then I went for further medical training because I went in as a medic to Wichita Falls. And after that, I ended up in Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. And that's where I spent the next 4 years. So while I was in the service, it was very important to me to have God in my life because as a girl coming from a small town in Michigan and into the big world and dealing with different types of people and different things, drugs, things that weren't right. You know, God just was in my space. You know, He was there always for me to keep me going straight, and which was very good for my career because, you know, I was always kind of in the lead position for other people. So I do felt that, you know, I did some good in the service and offered some things to people. And if I did not have my faith, you know, I could have gone a whole different way. So God put me on this path, like I said, you know, for me to be a nurse and to, that was my career up until like a year ago, you know, so I thank Him every day for what He has given me. And that's true. Okay, while I was in Arizona, Luke, I wanted to deploy overseas and, you know, take care of troops and so forth as being a medic. But I ended up being a medic and delivering babies at the base. And so I became you do much more as a med tech in the service than you do in the outside world. And I had some awesome experiences, you know, and God was just putting me on this path that I ultimately ended up getting out of the service, getting my RN degree, and have had a lifelong career as an OB nurse, both as staff nurse and management. And I truly love it, and I owe God for Him putting me in the right place at the right time. There was one time that we were delivering a woman, you know, she was, you know, everything was going well with her delivery and stuff. And we went in and delivered the baby vaginally, no problem. But she had 2 babies. And nobody knew she had twins. And the second one was transverse, so it was not going to deliver. So, you know, God, we all were praying for God to let this, you know, work. And we did an emergency C-section. The second baby was born healthy. And so Mom had a terrible time, but she got 2 beautiful babies.
I'm Wayne Tanner, and I went on active duty in July of 1970. And I spent 6 months in Virginia, 4 years in Germany, a year in Virginia, and a year and a half at Fort Hood, Texas. And I got off active duty and joined the Michigan Guard. And I was on active duty 7 years, and I was in the Michigan Guard for 17 years. I was in units in Grand Rapids, Dowagiac, and Ionia. And I retired from the Guard after 17 years, so I have a total of 24 years. When I went to college, you had to take 4 years of phys ed or 4 years of ROTC, and it was 1966. So I'd played the sports in high school and decided to try ROTC, and at the end of your sophomore year, you had to decide if you were going to go in the advanced course of ROTC, which meant you were going to go on active duty when you graduated. And one of the military professors said, "You're probably going to get drafted. Do you want to go in and make $100 a month as a private or $500 as a lieutenant?" So I went to the advanced course, went on active duty 6 months to Virginia, and then we were very fortunate, and I was married, and we went to Germany for 4 years. Came back to Virginia for a year, and then went to Fort Hood, Texas for 18 months. And so I joined the National Guard, the Michigan Guard, and I was in there 17 years. So I have a total of 24 years for retirement. And I was fortunate enough to make Lieutenant Colonel, and the retirement pay is nice, and the added benefit of the medical insurance. Well, when I got orders for Germany, it was Garmisch, and I'd never heard of Garmisch. And Andrew was taking a ceramics class one night a week, and the instructor and his wife had moved into a new house, so we had an open house for them. And I met 2 retired full colonels, and I had just gotten my orders that day. And one of them asked me, and I said, "I'm going to Garmisch." And he said, "Who the heck do you know in the Pentagon?" I don't know anybody in the Pentagon. He said, "The other guy," he said, "how can this lucky SOB get assigned to Garmisch as a lieutenant?" And he said, "I was in 30 years and never got stationed there." Well, come to find out, it was at the foot of the Alps. It was a military R&R center. It was a German tourist town and a European. They had a casino, skiing at the foot of the Alps, and it was close to heaven. And we were there a year and a half, and then I did not get selected to go on a short tour, so we were there another year and a half. So our oldest daughter was born there, and her doctor, German doctor on the German hospital, because we were too far from an American military hospital, so Andrew gave birth at the local German hospital, which was fine. And her doctor was a grandson of Johann Strauss, who I had heard of, but I didn't know what he did. And my German secretary told me. So that was nice.
Hi, my name is Kim Aloncar, and I'm retired Air Force. I was in 22 and a half years, so I started my career in 1985 in October, and I was stationed for basic training down in Lackland Air Force Base. And then after Lackland, I went to Francis C. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming for 4 years, and was part of weapons. It was like a weapons holding facility, for lack of a better term, and they had conventional munitions and also ICBMs, and so we brought on the Peacekeeper missile system there, and so that was kind of historic. And then after leaving there, I was stationed in Guam from end of 90 to part of 92. As for faith, the military helped me to become more bold in my faith, partly because the way that the Air Force or military life runs, you're used to accepting authority from somebody you don't always see, and I think that's part of it. And another part was that I was around a lot of good people within the chaplaincy corps and got to meet some great chaplains, and was actually inspired by a course that I took in college. I'll tell a story about a friend of mine. He was, I was enlisted my whole career, but he was a former pilot and a former colonel, that he was so passionate for Jesus that he started his own ministry down in Azle, Texas, and his son still runs it, actually. But his name was Lou, and he would always ask himself, well, what would Jesus do in this? You know, there was bracelets and stuff, obviously, about what would Jesus do, but he took it a little more seriously than most. He would, you know, almost every single decision he ever made, he would ask that question. And then he ended up with a stroke, and very debilitating stroke. But he had such a love in his heart that he actually got to the point where he valued getting the stroke, and that had an impact on me that I just can't really explain, other than here is this close friend of mine, somebody I admired professionally and personally, that said he was grateful for his suffering. Got involved with a group of people in the chaplain corps, with the men's group that I really love too, and we were called Brothers in Christ, and it's a bunch of very motivated guys that would bring young airmen in, train them religiously, to be more religious, spiritually minded, you might say, and then to have them move on to other people at their next base. And it was just something we did within our service, or our men's group. And we used to have a fun thing we would do where we would, whenever we were out around the base, if one person said BIC, which is Brothers in Christ, no matter what was going on, the other person would have to say Jesus. They would have to yell Jesus out loud, and so it would startle everybody, and it would turn a lot of heads. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, so between having to grasp the idea that you might be going to war, and then just growing up and maturing in life and in your faith, there was multiple ways that the military affected my faith, and then I tried to bring some of that understanding and training back to other people. So that's kind of.
Greg Jacobs was in the U.S. Army from 1989 to 92. So I did my basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky in the summertime, and then was shipped to Germany for the rest of my time, except for Desert Storm. So I ended up in Desert Storm when that happened, and quite an exciting time in the world. Not only Desert Storm, but in Germany, the wall was coming down in '89, and so a lot of big changes happening. Soviet Union was ending, and just a very interesting time to be in Europe and be in the world in general, especially from my vantage point. So, So faith in my, how faith impacted my time in the Army, I would say quite a bit. From a small town boy that all of a sudden had a whole new world opened up to him. It can be kind of scary when even though you're around a lot of people, you can feel quite alone when suddenly you go from everything you knew to getting yelled at every day, every moment of your life. So prayer was a constant thing. I don't have a big conversion story in my life. My parents always took us to church, and there was no question about that. We had to go, and I'm glad we did. But when you are suddenly in a brand new environment, the comfort that you get from your faith and from God is life changing. So stepping into this brand new environment, and everything just changes. Going to Germany then, by that time, a lot of things had changed. You have friends and those kind of, good things where you don't feel so alone, but I constantly felt God's presence along with me. And then when Desert Storm happened, that's a whole new deal. So before we even went over, when they tell you you're going, there's a lot of questions as far as what's going to happen, and will you come back, and just a lot of questions, a lot of anxieties, I think. So prayer life and faith was very important at that time in my life too. And then being over there, and just different things that happened, I always felt God's presence with me. And I still have actually the Gideon's Bible that I got and brought along with me everywhere. It fit in my jacket pocket. So just having that always present, and being able to read not only the New Testament, but Psalms and Proverbs too. I've always been big into the books of wisdom in the Bible, and the one passage in particular from Proverbs 21:31 says that the horse is prepared for the day of battle, but victory rests with the Lord. And that is a passage that stuck with me the entire time. So my job in the Army was, I was on a scout platoon. So we were scouts with 2nd Armored Division. So we had the big tanks behind us, but our vehicle was called a Bradley Fighting Vehicle. So it was about half the size of a tank. Still has a turret and everything, but during Desert Storm, I was the driver of the vehicle. And it was a fun thing to drive. I can tell you that. I do wish I still had one, especially in traffic and in the snow. But it was an amazing thing to drive around, and so my job was to basically watch the road, watch the lay of the land as two people are in the turret. We're looking for one thing, I see an entirely different set of things. So it was something I always had to be vigilant, and then sometimes could be scary too. When we got into situations, you feel like you are very trapped in a vehicle that you can't exactly jump into a ditch or run and hide. You are stuck in this thing too. But I had an amazing crew and friends to this day. Most of them were just at my wedding, so that says something about the guys. And we all got through it okay. But my job was an exciting job for an 18-year-old right out of high school to be driving through the desert and through the fields and the lands of Germany as well. So it was a great experience in my life. So I was 17 when I enlisted in the Army. My parents had to sign for me. Got started, and so I was a September birthday, so got started a little bit early, and it always just kind of planned on the military. My dad was in the Navy, my uncle was in the Army, and it was just something I think I always planned on doing. My best friend and I were going to go in the Marines. He went in the Marines. The Army recruiter got a hold of me and said, hey, well, we'll guarantee you your place of duty, which I really wanted to go to Europe and explore Europe. And so I skipped the Marines and went Army. And they would guarantee me my job too, which when I saw that position of cavalry scout on the screen there, and I thought that's something that could be pretty exciting, and it was. So I had a whole new adventure before I went to college. It was just so much easier afterwards, but I definitely wouldn't have made it in college right out of high school. I needed a break, I needed to travel, I needed, like I say, some adventure, and I definitely got it. So that was something I'm very thankful for, that experience, and just the friends that I still have from those days. And I was out of the Army and a veteran before I was legally an adult, before I was 21 years old. So that's something. I feel like I got a jump start on some things there, definitely.